Good morning, hello, and good afternoon. My name is Joel Richard. I am the technical coordinator for the BHL, and also I am the head of web and IT for the Smithsonian Libraries and Archives. Today, I will be presenting to you the technical priorities review for 2021 and the technical priorities preview for 2022, taking into account that 2022 is half over already. Let's get started. First, I'd like to recognize the members of the technical advisory group, which is led by me. Also, we have Mike Lichtenberg, our longtime BHL lead developer, Susan Lynch from the New York Botanical Garden, Nicole Carney from Museums Victoria, Elisa Herman from the Museum for Natpakunda, Bianca Crowley and JJ Dearborn, both from Smithsonian Libraries and Archives. And JJ Dearborn started with us this year and has been a great help in bringing her expertise in project management to the technical advisory group. Just an overview of the BHL technical architecture for those who may not be familiar with it. There have been few changes in the past year. The only substantive changes has been the addition of the Macaw server in the middle there, a standalone server, which I'll cover later in the talk. There are still some changes on the way based on infrastructure changes here at the Smithsonian, where the BHL is hosted, but we have no estimated date on that. And this is identified by the green circle and the transition from one server system to another. BHL digitization through the Macaw system has slowed down during the pandemic. You can see this chart shows us the pages added via Macaw since 2018, since January of 2018. And the line at the bottom on the left identifies the time frame in which the pandemic began. And you can see that the number of pages has dropped off dramatically since the pandemic hit and through the various waves of this, that, and the other of the various variants of the pandemic. However, Macaw is still ready and waiting for anyone to use. And it seems that perhaps maybe in January and February of this year, we had a slight increase in activity, and we hope that that picks up. To start our 2021 accomplishments, I'd first like to point out that we upgraded our documentation. All are stored on the Google Drive for BHL and are linked here in the slides. They're organized into 13 major topics. This is an ongoing effort among all of the members of the technical team. The largest and most significant addition to the documentation last year was the creation of a very comprehensive document for creating articles within the BHL admin dashboard. This was an effort on the part of many of us. It took us several months to get everything in order, but it is probably the largest addition to the BHL documentation in the past several years. I'd like to thank Bianca Crowley, however, for taking the lead on this and organizing this. It is not an easy task to organize this much information. However, she has done a great effort in doing so. I'd also like to point out that our giraffe here comes from the Edinburgh Journal of Natural History. I'm sorry I couldn't fit the giraffe in the picture fully. He's a little too tall. Moving on, another large accomplishment for 2021 was the inclusion of automatic PDFs for articles in BHL. If everyone is familiar with the creation process for a PDF, one could go onto BHL, select which pages you wanted to download, and then a PDF would be generated and a link would be emailed to you when the PDF is ready. This process happens behind the scenes to create PDFs for the articles in BHL ahead of time so that they are ready for download at any time during, when you're browsing through BHL. They are kept up to date as metadata and images and OCR change within BHL, and it has greatly reduced the need for downloading custom PDFs. All told, these automatic or these pre-generated PDFs are about 2 terabytes in size. And while this does seem like a lot of data, it is worthwhile due to, in order to provide a better experience for our users. And to give you a sense of how to download the PDF. When you're looking at an article on BHL, there's a little red PDF icon there, which then downloads to your computer. The PDF contains searchable, selectable text. And while the text is from the OCR, it is usually pretty good for the main body of the content. As always, if there are any problems that you have, please do let us know. And a very quick graph of the activity of the custom PDFs. Every week we keep statistics on how many PDFs were generated by the page selection and downloading and emailing and waiting. And this sort of gives us an idea of when we added the automatic or the pre-generated PDFs to BHL, identified by the arrow on the left. It seems that early numbers indicate that the need for custom PDFs has dropped off. And clearly on the new year, we had very few PDFs generated that week. I wonder why. As time goes on, we expect this number to either continue to drop or level off to just a lower baseline number. More accomplishments for 2021 were some new tools to create segments or article content inside BHL through a batch process using a spreadsheet or a CSV file. And also another big win was creating DOIs for articles and other content in BHL. This was a big achievement on the part of the Persistent Identifier Working Group, whose members are listed here. These two tools seem very small on the surface. However, they're allowing us to add more identifiable content in BHL, which therefore makes BHL more usable. Another partially completed another partially completed accomplishment is the idea of virtual items. And this is a new topic or new concept to BHL in that we are able to now ingest more article-only content into BHL. BHL then groups these articles that are within the same journal issue together logically rather than physically. I'll come back to this in the next slide, but still presents them in the familiar BHL interface. In 2021, we made a substantial change to the data structure underlying BHL without affecting what the users and the administrators of BHL see and do on a daily basis. So we made this shift under the hood, so to speak. And we are now prepared to ingest more content in BHL, and that process is in planning. And we're going to leverage some of the logic that has been built into the Macaw software to do this. And of course, as time goes on, we will have more information about that. Just to give you a very brief overview of what virtual items look like, a regular item in BHL is made up of, let's say, a regular item being, let's say, a journal issue or a single monographic volume, is one item at the Internet Archive, and that translates into one item at BHL. Those items in BHL may be grouped together under, say, one journal title, or they may be individual books. However, it's a one-to-one mapping between Internet Archive and BHL. The virtual items changes this model, where an item in the Internet Archive may be an article, and those articles are then brought together into a virtual item, which more or less looks and behaves like a regular item in BHL. The point is, we can bring in more content, more open access content, more freely available content into BHL to help bring this content into one place on the internet. That is one of the goals. And of course, if you have more questions about this, please do let us know. This has been a challenge to explain and understand, and I'm hoping this picture helps make sense. Moving on, in 2021, we upgraded the Macaw server. This is the hardware that runs the Macaw in the cloud for BHL. It is used by folks around the world. And my chart is maybe not used as much in the past 2 years, but it is still there and ready to use. Previously, we had a virtual server provided by the Smithsonian Central IT Department. In 2021, we purchased a dedicated server for Macaw, which gives us greater capacity and expanded use. The chart shows pretty much everything that I'm going to say. It's about 8 times the memory, twice the computing power, and 20 times the disk space for working in Macaw. It just removes the constraints that we've had over the past several years and allows us greater capacity to use Macaw to fix things like the compression issues, the image compression issues that we've seen from about 5 years ago. Of course, this compression thing is a whole separate project, and I'm not going to get into it, but it means that Macaw is more capable for use by our partners. And the last big piece, which is also still in the early implementation stages, is reprocessing the OCR that comes out of our content. BHL has been around for quite a while, 15 years, I believe. And in the early days of the Internet Archive, as things go, we use an early version of the OCR software. Newer versions, newer modern, newer open source versions that have machine learning sort of built into it are available. And that tool is Tesseract OCR. This is an OCR package that is supported by Google. It does have machine learning built into it. And it's being used at the Internet Archive for all new content. However, it is not being used to reprocess the OCR for old content. So our goal is to take the oldest content in BHL, tell Internet Archive to reprocess this using the latest versions, and then bring that new text into BHL. This is an ongoing project. It's going to take quite a while. An individual item in the Internet Archive can take up to 5 hours to reprocess. And we have tens of thousands of them to process. But the long-term benefits are better searchability, better ability to identify articles, better scientific name identification, and of course, the selectable, searchable content in the pre-generated PDFs that I mentioned earlier. We won't provide many updates on this, but it's just happening behind the scenes slowly and regularly until we have the OCR as good as it can possibly be in BHL using modern technologies. Moving on to the 2022 tech priorities, we are continuing our relationship with the Global Names Project to improve the name finding algorithms that identify content in our scientific names in BHL. They have made some great strides in improving their algorithm, both in terms of speed and in terms of searchability. I am not an expert in this area. However, it looks as if there's going to be great benefits to searching on synonyms, searching by entire taxons, and more importantly, from my perspective, the increase in speed to process and reprocess all of BHL's content when significant new versions come out. If we recall, several years ago, it would take a month to process all the OCR and scan for scientific names. 2 years ago, that was upgraded to take about a day and a half, depending on what computers we used. And then today, it takes approximately 7 hours to process all 60 million pages of content in BHL. It's in testing right now. We hope to deploy it later this year. And when that happens, hopefully our search results for scientific names will be improved. Again, behind the scenes, we're making updates to the Gemini ticket tracking system that we use for tracking scan requests, tech requests, all requests that come to the tech team and the cataloging committee and the collections committee for BHL. This has been a long time coming. JJ Dearborn has taken the banner for this to take the lead on helping us reorganize Gemini and turn her attention and her experience in project management to helping our flow of information through Gemini just be greatly improved. We're adding more rules and workflows to help us and more reporting to keep an eye on where things are. This again is an ongoing behind the scenes process. However, it really helps the technical team stay on top of where we are in our development and not get distracted by other shiny things that may come through Gemini. Back to Macaw, we have some improvements on the way. I mentioned earlier that the virtual items is something that we are working on and we have worked on in BHL. The next phase of this is to incorporate that into Macaw and help automate some of that activity as we ingest new content. Additionally, we are going to add the ability to add article metadata directly to Macaw, which would then be ingested into BHL. And this is a complementary feature to the batch import that I mentioned earlier that we built in last year. We're going to revisit the QA process for those partners who have volunteers or other staff who are working in BHL and need that extra level of review. We're also going to add more data validation to be more in line with the BHL's requirements and the admin dashboard. And finally, as always, documentation is a big push for McCall. The documentation is quite old, however, it is still up to date, but there's a lot of it and it needs a little bit of attention. Another we're going back to the behind the scenes thing again. Another priority is server modernization. This is taking some of the pieces that run BHL and bringing them up to the latest standards and versions of things. The big one is the full text search engine. Right now it runs just fine. However, we are on a version that is a little old, and the upgrade process will hopefully bring us some additional features and perhaps performance. We're also going to be looking to upgrade some of the code frameworks that run BHL, including the admin dashboard, and possibly the front end of BHL. We'll get there when we get there. Additionally, we are looking into expanding the metadata that is displayed for an author in BHL. Currently, we only show the publications that they're associated with, but we're adding more identifiers to the author information, and it will behoove us to add that content to the user interface. Speaking of the user interface, we are currently investigating updating BHL to be a more responsive web design. That is, BHL would behave differently on your phone or your tablet or your desktop computer, depending on the size of the screen. If you're not familiar with responsive design, it is one website that is meant to change gracefully between the two or multiple screen sizes. This is going to be a great shift in how BHL operates and opens the door, I think, to using it on other devices. And then the last item on this modernization list is coordinating with the Smithsonian's IT infrastructure to move the content that we have for BHL to their new the new storage system. We are in the queue to be moved. I don't know when that will happen, but it might allow us to start delivering images from the Smithsonian network instead of the Internet Archive, which gives us more reliability should the Internet Archive have network or other issues like earthquakes, because they're in San Francisco. And a few other items on the list. In conjunction with the new storage that I mentioned just a moment ago, we are investigating delivering the images for BHL through IIIF. This has been a long time dream of ours, a long time as in the past 4 years. IIIF offers us some interesting capabilities. We're also investigating adding arcs for pages, possibly scientific name related things, to give us some persistent identifiers to content in BHL. I mentioned the responsive design already, so I'll skip over that. More enhancements to our current tools. This includes some of what I mentioned about Macaw earlier. And as always, documentation. And for 2022, we're going to focus on documentation for transcriptions, virtual items, continue to review the Macaw documentation, and document how scientific names are handled with the Global Names Project, the Global Names Architecture Project, and how it integrates with BHL. That's pretty much all I have. Thank you for your time. I hope you are well, and I will be taking questions in person next week. Thank you very much.